Hello, Internet. I'm Evan Dashevsky, features editor with PCMag.com. Welcome to the Convo. Okay, it's springtime again. Flowers are blooming, birds are chirping, and love is in the air. So that can only mean one thing. It's time to send pictures of your junk to that special person in your life. Now, when it comes to sexting, there are potential negative consequences everyone should consider before they hit send. But should it ever be illegal for consenting individuals of appropriate age to sext? Are there things society, with all the full backing of the law, should do? Well, maybe. But before we get carried away with trying to protect people from risky behavior, there's an important element we should never lose sight of. Among consenting individuals, sending pics of your bits and pieces is actually kind of fun. So all the data shows that sexting is very prevalent. So I'm looking at you, definitely looking at you, Social Pete. We've all heard about the high-profile horror stories about private pics being disseminated to the world, but the vast majority of the time there are no negative consequences. It's just good, dirty fun. So how should society think about this very common activity? To help us answer that, we're glad to welcome one of the world's leading experts in sexting. She's an assistant professor with the Department of Communication at the University of Colorado, Denver, and the author of the book Sexting Panic. Dr. Amy Hasinoff, welcome to the Convo.
Thanks for having me.
Now, for those of you at home, the show is called The Convo, not The Dialogue. So if you have any questions about sending, pics of your bits, then ask them in the comments, and Social Pete will read them off throughout the show. Please don't leave actual pictures of your bits in the comments. And now, if you're watching this after the fact or listening to the podcast and you have questions, try Wikipedia, Google. There's all good sources out there. Okay. So, Dr. Hasinoff, was I correct to describe you as the world's leading expert in sexting?
That's very flattering. I'll take it.
Sure. Okay, so how widespread, no pun intended, is sexting? Do we have any hard data on how many people are doing this?
Yeah, we have some data, especially on young people. Among teens, older teens in particular, 16 and 17-year-olds, about a third of them are sexting. Mm-hmm. And once you get over 18, 18 to 24-year-olds, the surveys really vary because how you ask the question and how you define sexting gives you a very different answer. Mm-hmm. But pretty much every study is like above 50%. Some are saying 75% if you just count text messages. But if you're looking specifically at images, it seems to be 50 to 60% say that they have sent or received an image from another person. So it's pretty widespread. There was even a study of some seniors, I believe, and it had rates that were not quite as high, but it's certainly happening. So I think pretty much it's pretty common among adults, even teens are doing it, and it kind of correlates with people who are sexually active. So we're not seeing a lot of 12-year-olds who are sexting, and we're not seeing a lot of 12-year-olds who are sexually active, but of course there's always going to be a small percentage.
Gotcha. Now, there seems to be a sharp generational divide when it comes to sexting. That was actually surprising that the seniors are sexting as well. But you actually refer to this reaction from the older generation, they're kind of very worried about it as a moral panic. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so a moral panic is a theory from sociology that basically just means that people look at a social problem and they start to panic about it, and they usually focus their fear and their concern on kind of the wrong object. Mm-hmm. And it might be like a panic about something that's always been happening. So the classic study was about mugging in this sort of panic about mugging, but the rates of mugging hadn't actually changed. So they're just all of a sudden there was all this media attention to people getting mugged in the streets. Mm-hmm. And then the sort of object of fear became this particular group of people rather than sort of the actual problem. So with sexting, I think our fear tends to be about girls who are creating images, and people tend to worry about teen girls and them producing those images. But what I think is the real problem is privacy violations and coercion and unwanted sexting. So all of those things that are actually harmful, I think, are the real problem. But adults in particular tend to sort of just worry about teen girls in particular creating the images, sort of thinking that they're to blame for all of the problems, when in my view, it's really the perpetrators of harm who we should be blaming. Mm-hmm.
For anyone who's just joining us, if you have any questions or comments about sexting and how we can do it better, leave comments on Facebook. Oh, Facebook, I see you already have a question.
We got a viewer who is asking, is Snapchat the better platform to sext on?
Did you catch that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. I think it could be. So the important thing to know about sexting is, like any sexual behavior, it's never going to be 100% safe. There's just no way. If you're having any sexual act with any other person, that person could betray you, that person could harm you. And so what's the most important is to sext only with someone that you really trust and that you really believe is going to respect your privacy. And so you never want to sext with someone who's pressuring you or coercing you. There's actually research on that if you sext with someone who is pressuring you, it's a lot more likely that it'll be distributed. It's more likely that it'll be distributed if you sext with someone you're not in a relationship with. So if you're doing sexting as a way to start a relationship, the risk is higher. But to address the question, I think Snapchat is slightly safer because it sends a message to your recipient. This is not something I want you to save.
Yeah.
So then if the recipient wants to save it, they're going to have to circumvent Snapchat's features. So they could take another phone and take a photo of it. Sometimes they can screenshot it. I'm not sure if they fixed that problem or not, but I think that you can actually screenshot.
I believe it tells you that the person screenshotted it.
It tells you, that's right. Yeah. So then you've been told that your privacy has been violated. Yeah. So you know that person is kind of a jerk. And so that's good information to have. But if you're just sending it through regular text messaging, you won't get a notification, right, if there's been a screenshot. But of course, then they could take the other phone still and create an image without you knowing.
Right.
So I think if you're going to make a choice, I think it's safer. But I just want to make it clear. I mean, I'm sure everyone already knows this. There's no way to be completely safe.
Right.
But I think it's an interesting approach that says it does send that message to your recipient to say, listen, this is supposed to be private. In case you didn't already know, which you really should, because any photo of anyone that's sexual, it's obviously private.
Right.
I think, I actually did a study asking people, what are your perceptions of people receiving these photos? And pretty much everyone said, yeah, duh, a sexual photo is obviously supposed to be private. Yeah. But at least Snapchat adds one more layer of communication that don't share this, don't save it.
Right.
So.
Oh, now one of the solutions you talk about is, there's been a movement towards affirmative, what's the word I'm looking for? Affirmative okaying?
Affirmative consent?
Affirmative consent. Yeah, that's something that's big on college campuses dealing with date rape and things like that. You say that this could actually also apply to sexting. Do you foresee an actual button? Do you accept the terms of sending the sex, or do you think an eggplant emoji is enough of consent for that?
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
I think the button is not necessarily necessary.
Yeah.
The concept of affirmative consent, and I actually think we should use it for any private image or any image that could be private, not just sexual images. I think we've seen, especially lately, there's a lot of new laws and new policies that are setting us up to have our privacy violated.
Yeah.
And I think affirmative consent is something we can actually apply to all private digital information. And so the idea there is just that you should have to get someone's permission before you distribute their private images,
right,
or do you distribute their private information. So for example, maybe my internet service provider should have to actually get my explicit permission before they sell my browser history.
It's interesting you bring that up now. Yeah.
Just thinking about these other issues that are actually, I think, very much related, is that if it's information that I consider to be private, you should have to ask me. And that's the model that I draw from affirmative consent for sex, where it's you should have to ask in some way to say, should we do this? Is this okay? Let's, are you interested? That kind of something that seems, when people first hear about it, it seems difficult, but I think it's something once you integrate, it doesn't have to be super formal. It doesn't have to be a button. It does not have to be a contract. Though with my internet service provider, I really would prefer a contract rather than just an emoji eggplant saying, can I share your browser history? But in all seriousness, the point is just that permission is necessary. You should have to ask permission. Do you want to receive this? Can I send you this photo? Would you like to see a photo of me? And if you want to share it with someone else, I think really it's so vital to ask. I think the answer is usually going to be no, which is why asking is so important. You should never assume someone wants you to distribute their private photo. You should never assume that a person wants their browser history distributed without their permission. So in the same way, I think that consent really applies to private information, and I think we can do a better job of that, both in our personal lives and in our policy as well.
Definitely. Facebook, you have a question.
What would be your advice to someone who is being, say, pressured into participating?
Yeah, if someone is being pressured, I think the simple advice is obviously just don't do it. But obviously, if they're asking the question, there's something that's making them think they have to do it. I guess I could think of, I don't know if there's a follow-up as to why they feel like they have to. I think if someone is pressuring you, they're doing something wrong, and you should probably break up with them, because if they're not going to respect your boundaries about sexting, they're probably not going to be a very good partner. If they're not going to respect your boundaries about sexting, they're probably not going to respect your boundaries involving sex or anything else. So I guess I would say dump that person if they're pressuring you. I really don't think that if you say no repeatedly and someone is still pressuring you, I'm not really sure what the excuse would be for them to keep doing it, because not everyone is into sexting. Not everyone wants to do it, and not everyone should do it. It's definitely risky. Everything that's fun, it's risky, but it's not for everyone. I mean, even though I live in Denver, I do not go downhill skiing because I'm terrified of it. And so it's something that a lot of people find to be fun, but I kind of think it's terrifying to go downhill skiing. Like, you hear about people breaking their legs and getting concussions, and I'm sure it's fun, but it's not for me. So if someone is like telling you need to go skiing this weekend, like, no, you don't need to be that person's friend. You don't need to be with that person. Right. I'm not sure if I'm getting all the complexities of the question.
Right. I think the basic idea is that you reject being pressured. Just to make sure, Social Pete, no one's pressuring you to sex, right? Yeah. No, you weren't talking for a friend. Okay, good to know. Okay, so also one of the suggestions that you talk about is that revenge porn comes up in the news a lot. Is that people should have more power to have their images taken down, like copyrighted material. So I mean, how do you see that actually being enacted? What do you see for that?
Yeah, I think it would be really useful to have a notice and a takedown notice system for your personal images. So with the Copyright Act right now, if you find your copyrighted content online, you can send a takedown notice, and then if the website doesn't comply, I think you can sue them, or you can collect damages, or try to resolve that situation. So, we've had that for copyright for a long time, and of course, it is not foolproof. I mean, we all know there's many ways to steal copyrighted content, and people still do it, but it does decrease the availability of it, and it also sends a message to society that we care about protecting intellectual property. We don't really have the same level of commitment to protecting privacy. So I think it could be really interesting to try to implement some kind of similar system where if you found your image online, you could put, notify the website. And some websites, I should be clear, do have policies that if you notify them, they will take stuff down. Google, I think recently, maybe last year, added a feature that was trying to address revenge porn, where you can notify them that your private content is showing up in search results, and they will take that out if they agree with you that your privacy has been violated. Facebook, I think maybe just this week, announced that they are now doing, I don't know all the details, but I think if you report an image as a private sexual image, they'll prevent that image from being reposted, because they're going to know what's in the image, and then their filters can detect it if someone tries to so they'll take it down and prevent it from being reposted. I don't actually know all the details of how that works. So individual websites are doing certain things, but I think if we had a better legal system for people to address those privacy violations, I think people would be better off. It's really interesting that we're so willing to bend over backwards to protect people's right to profit off their content, which, I get, that's why copyright exists, but we don't have similar laws to protect privacy. So websites have that, they don't have liability for things that are posted on their sites other than copyrighted content, child pornography, and maybe one other category. But basically, if your stuff is private, you can ask a website to take it down, but they don't necessarily have to comply because they're not liable. And that's a law that's from maybe 10 or 15 years ago that limits website immunity.
Gotcha.
Limits website liability.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now, we also talked about, when we're talking about the law and stuff, there's places where I think most people would agree that, if a teenage boy or girl, creates an image of themselves and sends it to another teenage boy or girl, they can actually, in some instances, get charged for child pornography, even if it's an image of themselves. I think most people would agree that that's a bad idea. What are the current laws? I mean, does it vary state by state, or is it a federal law of, will a teenager can they be prosecuted for child pornography?
Yeah, so the short answer is yes, they can be prosecuted. There's a federal law regarding child pornography that was passed in the 80s, long before we ever imagined that teens would have photo taking capabilities, on their own, on their cell phones. So in the 80s, if you wanted a photo, you'd have to take the film to a developing lab, right? And so there was not a lot of this happening because nobody wanted to take their, nude selfies to a developing lab. Right. So this wasn't really a problem when the laws were passed. And so they wrote these laws really broadly to say that anyone who produces, possesses, or distributes an image, a sexual image of someone under 18 is committing this crime. And so that includes if you're producing an image of yourself, if you're a teen. So that's federal law, and those laws also exist in every state. But then other states also, in addition to those child pornography laws, have new sexting laws that are misdemeanors. So the child porn laws are felonies. And then about half of states have misdemeanor laws. And those laws sort of seem like a good idea because it's a lesser penalty, but the problem is they still criminalize consensual sexting. So you still have, if a teen produces an image of themselves and just sends it to their partner, nothing bad happens. Both teens have already committed this crime. They've violated child pornography laws. Now they've also violated these misdemeanor laws. So the prosecutor can choose to not charge anybody, or they can choose to use the misdemeanor law, or they can choose to use the felony law. And so if they have that option to use the misdemeanor law, I think the problem with that is that sometimes they'll charge the victims of privacy violations to sort of send a message to all the teens to say, you shouldn't be sexting, you shouldn't be doing this, it's dangerous. And it's true that it's dangerous, but I really don't support criminalizing it in any way, because if it's consensual, they're not harming anyone. I don't think the law has any place in criminalizing that kind of behavior. If parents want to tell their teens, don't sext, it's bad, that's their prerogative. I think it's important for teens to understand the risks of sexting. Most of them already do. When we look at the research, they understand that it's risky, but teens do things that are risky all the time because they think it's fun. And that's kind of just life. But we don't criminalize teen sex, right? We have age span provisions. So like a 16-year-old can have sex with a 17-year-old, and that's pretty much legal, I think, in every state, because we've realized you can't just tell teens, oh, having sex is illegal, and think that they're just not going to do it if we tell them it's illegal. So my position is we should remove teens from child pornography laws with regards to consensual sexting, and have better sort of privacy revenge porn laws to then specifically and narrowly address the actual harm that's happening.
Well, let's talk about educating the youth. So on your website, you actually, I gave some things which I thought were interesting. You said when, talking to kids or for advice for teachers is to monitoring phones is not effective against sexting. Why do you say that?
I say that because teens and any of us are pretty good at finding the technological tools to get around the monitoring. So for example, if you know that your internet service provider can sell your browser history, you can get a VPN to try to prevent that from happening. Of course, it's never going to be foolproof, but we're all pretty good at finding ways around the sort of monitoring and surveillance functions that are being put upon us. So I think teens also can Google, how do you hide things on your phone? They don't necessarily just accept monitoring without thinking about it. And so that's one thing, is I think they can get around it. The second thing is I think it really sends the wrong message that it's okay for someone who's, protecting you to monitor all your internet activity. Again, it sort of teaches teens that, as long as someone has your best interests at heart, it's okay for them to monitor your phone. And I totally get why parents want to monitor their teens' phones, but would you want your teen's partner monitoring their phone? Would you want your teen's school monitoring their phone? Would you want the internet service provider monitoring your personal browser history? Not necessarily that even if you're doing anything wrong, but just that idea that just because you have nothing to hide does not mean you shouldn't care about privacy. And I think if you monitor teens' phones, you're sending them that message that, as long as someone loves you, it's okay for them to surveil you, which then you can round up to, as long as the government has your best interests in mind, it's okay for them to have your entire browser history. I don't think we should accept that. I think we should fight to maintain our privacy and teach kids that they have a right to their privacy. And I know there's a lot of parents out there who do monitor their phones and believe it's an important tool, and I get it. I just want to provide the other position that I think it kind of could lead to some dangerous ideologies that, we don't need privacy when in fact it's really vital.
Now, the first time I discovered your work was you gave a TED Talk last year, which is, you guys should check out. It's really fascinating. She really dives into it. But like in that TED Talk, I think there was more tee-heeing amongst the audience than I've ever seen at any other TED Talk speech. I guess the question is, someone who kind of just really thinks about this a lot, why is sex funny?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think people are uncomfortable with talking about sex, and I think laughter is a pretty natural reaction to something we feel kind of uncomfortable about.
Yeah.
And I certainly try to add a bit of humor into talks like that to try to get the audience to kind of relax a little bit, because when you start talking to adults about teen sexting, they kind of get defensive immediately. That's kind of their first reaction is like, teens should never sext. It has to be illegal. It's terrible. Maybe it shouldn't be child porn, but I don't want my teen sexting. And so I try to use humor to try to get people on board, try to get them to relax. But I guess I would just say it's probably because people are uncomfortable, but I don't know. You have to ask a psychologist that question.
Okay, now we're going to round out. We asked the same 10 questions to all our guests regarding their discipline or where they're coming from. So this isn't related to the topic, but and these are mostly short answers. If you feel prompted to say more, the floor is yours. But do you use Windows or Mac?
I use Mac.
Okay. Android or iOS?
iOS, yeah.
All right, you're in the Apple sphere, all right. Have you recently come across a piece of technology and it made you think, wow, I'm really living in the future?
Oh, I don't know. I actually kind of Plex, which organizes your media files and streams it to your TV.
Yeah.
I'm kind of amazed by it. It's working pretty well. So yeah, Plex, I mean, it's pretty basic, but it didn't exist for a long time. So once I got that, I was like, yes.
No, we are fans of Plex over here. Where do you get your daily news and information from? What, like platforms, or how do you get your news throughout the day?
Yeah, I mean, I look at the New York Times in the morning. I look at NPR. I do rely
on the websites, or you read an actual paper?
On the website.
Okay,
Sorry, yes, I should say I get my news online.
Yeah. Ed Snowden, traitor or hero?
I'm gonna say hero. I'm gonna go with hero.
Okay. Will the singularity occur in 2054?
2054. That's very specific. That must be from some person's prediction. Is that
Ray Kurzweil? Yeah.
Is that Kurzweil's prediction?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna just go with no, but maybe. Who knows?
Okay. Will Facebook exist in 20 years?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm going to say yes, because media monopolies tend to be stable. I mean, NBC, ABC, CNN, they've all been around for quite a while. So I think if Facebook can continue to sort of minorly adapt, it's got that network effect. Everyone's on it. So there's a lot of pressure for it to continue. So I'm going to say yes, but who knows?
Is there intelligent life out there in the universe?
Yeah, probably somewhere. Okay. I think the odds are good. Right. Yeah, sure.
Is Bigfoot out there?
Oh, I mean, probably not.
Probably not?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is your go-to drink when you go to a bar?
Gin and tonic.
Gin and tonic, that's a good one. Okay. Your favorite holiday?
Sorry, I missed the last question.
Your favorite holiday?
Oh, favorite holiday. I'm not actually a fan of holidays.
Who doesn't like holidays?
I don't like holidays.
Okay, yeah. You like working? Okay.
No, I like going on vacation. I don't like holidays like Easter, Halloween. Let me say spring break.
Spring break, okay, great, perfect. We're in the golden age of television. This is the last one. What are you watching these days?
I am rewatching Freaks and Geeks because it's one of my favorite shows. Yeah.
Great. Okay, well, that's all the questions we have. Dr. Amy Hasinoff, this has been amazing. The book is Sexting Panic. You can find that and check out more about this topic, or check out her website, which Social Pete will leave in the comments. So if you're watching this for the first time, give us a like, give us a share. Check out some of our past interviews. The Convo is an audio podcast. It's on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast at. If you like this, subscribe, give us a like, give us a review. Those are always really welcome. Thanks to everyone who participated in the conversation. Thanks to Social Pete. Be good to each other and only sext with consent. Peace.